Shinobi WAT-AAH! This is the name of the game, so that's how I have to say it. Shinobi WAT-AAH is a game set in a fantasy version of Japan, populated by anthropomorphic animals that do ninja stuff and that get together in dangerous clans fighting against each other. The game can be played in two different modes. There's a basic mode in which players control groups of clans and they are just trying to acquire power, and the player who acquires the most power wins the game. And then there's a more advanced and complex mode which is built around that same system, and you still maneuver clans of anthropomorphic fighting animals, but this time you're also trying to accomplish other missions and to score points in different ways. There's also a final boss that may give a lot of points or make you lose final points depending on how you fight against it and how that final boss is scored. So actually the advanced mode is pretty much the basic mode with a slightly more complex scoring system and some extra tasks added to it. Let me tell you a little bit about Shinobi WAT-AAH and how it works. WAT-AAH. The game can be played in one of two ways, the basic mode and the full mode or advanced mode. For the basic game, all you need is this deck of cards and these 4 tokens, and you give 1 token to each player. Then you deal 8 cards to each player. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each player gets 8 cards, with the exception of the first player, who only gets 7, and that is the starting hand of the players. Now, the cards that you have a point value on top. That is the amount of victory points that the card is worth at the end of the game. Most cards have a colorful frame, and that indicates the clan that the card belongs to. Cards with the frame of the same color belong to the same clan. Some cards have a bamboo frame, and these are special cards, do not belong to clans, and they can be used to trigger special effects. There's also a Ronin card that has a silver frame. The Ronin also doesn't belong to any clan specifically. The Ronin is a wild card. Cards also have effects that are triggered when the card is placed on the table to start a clan or to reinforce a clan. At the beginning of your turn, you draw cards, and you can do it in one of two ways. You can draw a card from the deck, add it to your hand, and that's it. Or you can do something a little more complicated, which is you can choose to reveal a card, reveal it to everybody, note the number, place it under your token, suppose this is my token, and then draw a number of cards equal to the value of the card that you drew plus 2. In this case, that would be 5 cards. So you get more cards this way, but the card that you placed under the token will count as negative points against you at the end of the game. After you have drawn your cards, you can place cards on the table. And you can place cards in one of two ways. You can start a new clan, or you can reinforce a clan. A clan is a group of 2 to 4 cards placed in such a fashion, in a vertical line, on the table. You can start a new clan by placing 2, 3, or 4 cards of the same clan on the table, as long as that is a clan that you do not own already. You can only have one copy of a clan in front of yourself. You cannot have, say, 2 clans of the carp or 2 clans of the toad. Clans have effects that are triggered when you place them on the table. If you started a clan with 2 cards, then you read and trigger the 2 card effect. If you placed a 3 or 4 card clan on the table, then you trigger the 3 card effect. Yes, also if you use 4 cards, you still trigger that effect. You simply read the effect and you implement it. In this case, this card will give me 4 extra cards from the Shinobi deck, which is this one. There are vastly different powers. The Toad allows you to return cards to the owner's hand or a full clan to its owner's hand. The Spider destroys cards or clans. The Toad we saw already. The Monkey copies the power of other clans. The Bear doesn't have any power, but is worth a ton of points, and that's, well, why the card is interesting. The Clan of the Dragon allows you to look at the first 3 cards of the Shinobi deck, keep 1, discard the others, or you can do the same with 5 cards. Different clans have vastly different abilities. So you can do one or two things. You can start a new clan, or you can reinforce a clan that you already have. To reinforce a clan that you already have, what you do is you place cards from your hand and attach them to an existing clan. Remember, the maximum amount of cards in a clan is 4, and that's it. I use my action to reinforce with 2 cards. If you reinforce a clan with 2 cards, you also activate the 2 card effect of that clan. If you reinforce a clan with 3 cards, you activate the 3 card effect. Special cards, the one with the bamboo frame, cannot be placed as part of a clan when you are starting a new clan, but they can be added to an existing clan. So as your action, when you're enforcing a clan, you attach the special card with the bamboo frame to a clan. You trigger the effect, and also at the end of the game you will receive the corresponding points. Some cards have excellent effects and not a huge amount of points connected to them. Some cards have not very interesting effects or no effect at all, a much higher point value that you will score at the end of the game if you still have that card in front of you in one of your clans. So you reinforced your clan, so you started a new clan. After that, all you need to do is to discard a card from your hand. It is mandatory if you have at least a card in your hand. Put it in a discard pile. There are a lot of effects that interact with the discard pile. And that's it. Your turn is over. Next player goes through the same procedure. Draws cards in one of 2 ways. A single card or extra cards with penalty. Starts a new clan or reinforces a new clan, discards a card. The game continues until a player has 4 clans in front of himself. When a player has 4 clans that are active on the table, the game is over and you count victory points, and victory points are simply represented by the numbers on top of the cards. You total together all the points of the cards in the clans in front of you. You subtract points that you have as penalties under your token that you added to your set, to your area when you draw extra cards. In this case, for example, I lose 3 points. Total these, subtract these, you have your final score. The player with the highest score is the winner. Now, this is the basic mode. The advanced mode uses extra components, uses that board, these other cards, and some shuriken tokens, which are just incredibly neat looking. The basic core engine of the game remains the same. You still play the game that I explained to you, but you play 3 rounds of the game, and at the end of each round there is a special procedure that you perform using these components here. Once you have played the round normally, you will receive a certain amount of shurikens based on your ranking, and in the rulebook you have a section that explains how that works. For example, with 4 players, the first player in a round of the regular game receives 4 ninja pawns, second 3, and so on and so forth. So you receive these tokens and you can spend them by placing them on this board. Also, it must be said that the player that came last in the ranking has an advantage, can choose to do one or 2 things. To draw a card from this deck, the only way that you have to interact with that deck is to be last in a round, and those cards will give you advantages which you place face up in front of you. They're permanent, or you can choose to use the your last position, the advantage that comes from being last, to pick up one of those 3 cards that are there, so you know what the card is. At the beginning of the game, you draw 4 cards randomly from a small deck of boss cards. 3 are placed there, 1 is placed in the middle. This is the one that really matters. So the reason why in the game you may want, and you will want, to look at those cards is simply to eliminate possible cards and to get a sense of what the card in there may be. You will never be able to have absolute certainty because not every card will ever be placed there, but you can get a sense, you can make an educated guess if you have been able to pick at those cards. That is if you're last. In any case, then players with Shinobi tokens can place them on the board, and they can place them in one of 3 locations. They can place a token here, and in that case that will give them a card from this at the deck, and these are advantages that can be then used during the round. Players can place tokens here, and they can place multiple tokens here. Each time that the number of tokens that you have there reaches an even number, you can look at one of the cards that are face down in that area, or you can place a token on the boss. And then we'll see what that means, why that matters. At the end of the 3rd round, you tally the final score, which you put together by counting the victory points that your ninja pawns give you. Each ninja pawn that is here or here gives you a victory point, so that's a 1-to-1 exchange. The pawns that are here will give you points in a slightly different way depending on who the villain is. Each of these cards, villain cards, represents a villain that will score in a different way. The first thing that happens when you reveal the villain is that each player loses a number of pawns equal to the number printed there. Pretty much the players have been gathering clans and forces to send against the villain, and this is the damage that the villain inflicts on the players. Then, once you have the final number of pawns that each player has in there, you score the villain. You score the villain simply receiving the number of victory points represented by the number of tokens that you have. What is interesting is that each villain scores in a different way. For example, the Dark Shogun always gives you 50 points. You may have 1 token, 2 tokens, 3 tokens, it doesn't matter. As long as you have 1, you score 50 points. This guy here scores you more points the more tokens you have there. This one is completely random because with even numbers you get a bonus, with odd numbers you get a penalty, actually lose points. The gaijins, if you have 2 or less tokens there, then you lose points. If you have 3 points or tokens or more, then you score points. The zombies are just a pain. The only thing is that you need to make sure to have a basic defense, at least. Do not have 0 tokens there. And then this one is really tricky because actually the worst thing, pretty much one of the worst things, is to have 0 tokens there. But then if you start placing tokens on the card, the more you place, the worse the penalty gets. So here at the end of the advanced game, you score points by receiving points for the tokens that you have here, the tokens that you have here, whatever score that you get for fighting the final boss. And at that point, the player with the highest amount of victory points is the winner. As I played the game, not for a second did I think that the full mode was the real mode, that the designers came up with that game, with the cards and the board and the final boss, and then they realized, oh my gosh, look at that, we could just extrapolate part of that and make it into a mini game. I have the impression that things went the other way around, that there was this card game, that set collection card game, which is called the basic mode here, and then they added the extra elements to also have an advanced version. Is that what happened historically? I have no evidence, but it feels that way. It really feels like the real game is the basic game, and somehow I found a little bit of a disconnection between that and advanced mode. So I can tell you already, I much prefer the basic game, and I prefer to play the basic game by itself as a simple card game, which if you play like that, it also becomes very portable. All you need is just to it's just the cards and the tokens, and you can use whatever else as the tokens. So it becomes a very portable card game, which can be used as a filler, as a slightly advanced filler if you wish. The game plays from 2 to 4 players, and I'm talking about the basic game only. 2 to 4 players. It plays well. It is just a fun game. I like the interaction of the characters. I like all the strategies that will emerge only as you play the game, and you start realizing, well, this is a great clan, and the worst thing I could do in the world would be to play it now. I keep it in my hand until it is right time to put it down, so that the way it interacts with certain effects is advantageous to me. Certain clans that could hurt me already came out, so it's less likely that it will hurt me in the future. The interactions of the clans are great, are really what the game is about, much more than just collecting sets of cards of a certain color. And I like that. I like how that results in a lot of subtle decisions you have to make based on a system of rules which is really basic. And then you find yourself transported to a completely different place when you're playing the full game. Because the two elements of the full game to me really don't seem to go together well. They're too mechanically different. They are philosophically different in that the part that happens around the board with the boss card and the missions feel somehow to contradict the previous part of the game. They don't go together. Actually, they are sort of almost, I wouldn't say mutually exclusive, but they may affect each other in strange ways. I guess that after I played for, 20 minutes in a very exciting round in which there was a lot going on as clans were getting on the table, being destroyed, pushed back into the players' hands, balance was achieved through group dynamics, because there's also this fun element when you're playing with multiple players. When you're playing the basic game with multiple players, a player may get ahead of the rest or ahead of the pack, and appears like that player is close to close the round and to win the game. Then the other players can gang up against that player. You have all of these things going on, and then all of a sudden you're just placing tokens on that board, and the significance of that placing tokens is huge. Guessing the card that is the boss card and the way in which that card will score is huge. So I feel like you may play for 40 minutes if you're playing several rounds. The main game, then you have these quick rounds in which you are putting tokens on the board, and then you maybe lose the game because you did not place a token correctly on that board, because the final card scores in a way that you did not expect. I just feel like that board feels very foreign to the main game, to the basic game, but to me really that is the main game, and it can completely revert what happens there. And to have some 30-40 minutes of spirited, exciting gameplay completely reverted by a simple, quick decision, which is in many cases, at least the outcome of the decision is out of your control. To me, that feels like it weakens the game. It doesn't add anything all that exciting. If anything, it weakens. To me, therefore, Shinobi WAT-AAH is what the rules call the basic game. To me, that is the game. set collection game, a card game with really beautiful looking cards that you can carry around, which is what I will do. I'll place them in a little bag, and that will be a filler game to go for me. That is a solid game. This is a game, as I said, with interesting group dynamics. All of these are things that are fun. The game, the basic game, is a perfectly solid little game. By little game, I'm not just talking about the size, I'm talking about a game that plays in under an hour, that is not hard to teach, that is not hard to learn, which can be used as a filler, but it's a little meatier than a basic filler. To me, a filler is a game that plays in, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Here, you may want to play a round or two. Well, it may last around 20 minutes. You're playing a single round as a single game. Maybe you'll want to play the game twice. Still, point is, it's not a big game conceptually or time-wise. It is a perfectly fine and tight game. The other part of the game, to me, that doesn't feel like it's necessary at all. I doubt that I will play it in the future. Maybe I will, but as I said, it's not likely. It doesn't hurt the main game. You just, nothing forces you to use it. It's just that, well, it's not a resource that I will take advantage of. It's not a part of the set that interests me. Other than this, the basic game, the core game of Shinobi WAT-AAH is one that I enjoy, and I would recommend to players that are looking for a quick, fast, simple game that doesn't take forever to play and has a lot of interesting decisions to it.